Okay, I did say last time I'm going to show you how I actually paint these live, so I'm going to use this video to explain the process I go through. I'm going to do Gordon Ramsay today. Now, as you see, I've got two photographs of Gordon. This is the one I basically did the rough sketch from. You can see it's not exactly like him, but if you look at any of my other previous sketches and final results, they tend not to look like they're people to start with, and then I correct them as I paint them. Now, the pencil sketch, you'll notice, needs some work in the areas of basically, I think Gordon's got a bigger head. Obviously goes with his personality probably. Okay, so, but the thing is, you'll notice I haven't got his hair on there at the moment, so I've given some space at the top here to get this wonderfully boofy hair. Okay, but you'll notice the feeling is a lot bigger than what I've got here. I need to shallow this down a little bit, and I think he needs, you notice there he's got more rounded cheeks, so this is going to have to come round out a bit more. Okay, once I've done that, his nose is a little bit bigger, I believe, and he's got a bigger chin area, so I've got to try and figure out how to work all that in. So maybe I'm going to lower the jaw a bit, but one thing you have to notice is that, you know, his eyes go from the top of his head are lower than where the top of the image is, so wherever I finish here, that's got to be a lot bigger than that. So his eyes have got to come down a little bit. His nose has got to get a little bit bigger. I think I can probably adjust this bit a little bit. And he's got to have a bigger chin. You notice also he's got a rounded chin. Now the reason I've got two pictures as well, even though I'm using this one as the basis for the look and feel, the colours are terrible. He's got very pale skin and everything. I don't think that's going to work too well. So I found another one of him with quite nice colouring. So what I'm going to do is use this to sample the colours, and then I'm going to use this one to give the feel. Okay, I can't do the whole video because they take 8 hours, so what I'm going to do is stop and start and show you how I do things. Hopefully it will build up into quite a decent view of how I actually make a caricature. But now the first step is to get the face shape correct. And I do this in 3 different ways. First I put this in multiply so I can see the background, and I make a new layer underneath. Okay, I'm going to zoom in here, and what I've got to try and do is find a moderately neutral pink colour. That's about right. Okay, and then I've got to really quickly rough out how I see his head. Now you see there, that's kind of like an indication that's more of a curve, but it seems to basically come straight down like that. And because I'm actually doing this from fresh instead of copying the exact pencil drawing, what I'm going to do is only do half of his face, and I'm going to clone it basically, because I tend to find I don't get them exactly correct on both sides. Okay, if I do it this way. So what I said before is he's got this kind of curvature there, but this has got to then go down into a bigger chin, and his chin is very rounded at the bottom anyway. So there's doesn't matter if it's exact because we can erase things. Okay. Now if I just turn that off, what I need to do is to just zoom in and make you see how rough the actual pen drawing is. Now when you do it from far away, it's basically very rough. So I've got to zoom in and make the leading edge quite sharp as I can anyway, because that will help in the next stage, which I'll show you obviously. Let's see. So I've got the rough outline of one side of his head. Now, even though we're going to have hair on top, I've got to give it some kind of feeling of flesh underneath, even if it's rough. So what I'm going to do here is possibly do that much and hope for the best when I fill in the hair. Okay, so that's my half a drawing. So what I do now is I basically duplicate it, just flip it horizontally. Now you see he's got a very wide face. So what I'm going to have to do is keep pulling that out until I get the feeling of what I want, which could be around about there. Okay, I flatten that down so, oops, did it onto the wrong layer. So flatten that so it's all one object. Correct that. That'll be okay. Actually, he's got a kind of a uppercut to his chin. Now, don't worry about this either, because that's all going to be covered in hair, as I said. Now let's just fill that, and then just get rid of all the. It helps if it's on 100% as well. So I'll do this, and I'll be back when I get to the eyes, which is the first stop. Okay, so you can see the drawings changed quite a lot into the final first stage, which is the skin. I'll just deselect some of these. That's the head shape. As you can see, I've given him more of a rounded jaw, lessened this cutting, and you'll notice the cutting is at the top of his eyes, so I'm going to lower the eyes when I do them, which is around about here. Okay, giving him a bigger head area, and I'll do the rest as I make it up as I go along. But I've also done a neck on a separate layer, and Gordon's got enormous ears. Okay, so you can see basically he's got big ears in my picture as well. I think they're in the wrong place at the moment, so I'm going to have to just drop them down like so, and they should be okay now. Okay, so the next stage is to do the eyes. And this is the most important part of the picture. If you get the eyes right, then everything else fits into place. So what I tend to do is I get the best picture for the eyes, which is probably this one, and I mask it off like so. I put it where my eyes are, so I can zoom in. Now you can see it's not very good quality picture, but I can at least sample the colours and things. So what I do then is I get a new layer. Obviously we need to use the keys, shortcut keys, which is Alt in this case, to get the sampling brush. And because of the lighting, I'll just check the lighting on the other picture. Yeah, see the lighting's from the opposite direction on this picture, so what I'm going to have to do is sample from this one. And you think eyes are white, but they're not. And that's like a funny muddy kind of colour. You see there's a little bit of what seems to be white there as well. Actually the lighting is coming from the same direction, so I can sample as much as I can from here. But then what I do is I look at the picture, look at my image of the eyes, and see how much I need to change it. In this case it's not that much. There's more of a curve there than there is there, and you see I haven't got the curve, so what I've got to do is I do a neutral version of the eye shape, but he's got this kind of strangely angled, almost like a frown look, like so. And if I turn off the sketch now, I've got the basic formation of the eye. As I said again, because I've altered the original drawing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this and sample it over, so I can create the other eye, and I just need to fill that in like so. Now you notice I've got this one brush I use. I'm just going to enlarge it so you can see the shape of it. It's actually it's actually used for hair. That's what its actual determination is. But because of the way I think real paintbrushes are, which is just a lot of hair, I see it as kind of useful of giving that kind of feeling of a brush being painting onto a surface. Now let me just do a few things in front of you. I'm going to delete these, but if I just do a single press, you see it doesn't do much even at 100%, so I'm going to keep pressing it down a bit. You'll see it gives a kind of a feeling of lots of dots. Okay, but the thing is, you wouldn't paint like that unless you're dabbling, obviously. So what I do is I use it as a stroking brush, which is why I think it's been developed, because obviously it will look like hair then. But you'll see it gives you this thick and thin feeling. Now obviously if you do it in large quantities it gives a solid colour. But what you can do, and this is the important part of it, is if you do it in less than 100% on flow and opacity, it gives a nice blending option. But what I'm going to do obviously is not do that at the moment because I'm still building up the picture. So I'm going to copy that eye, deselect that. Now what we've got here is a problem because I've obviously just shown you how I do this. Escape that. I need to erase all the thing I just did on that part of the image to show you the brush, else it's going to see it as part of the object all the time. And just going to flip it over. Now what we're going to do is try and place this roughly where I think his eye needs to go. Now he's got quite short beady eyes, small, but I don't think they're that small. So what we're going to have to do here again is, once I've got them where I think they should be, which is, see on there his eyes look close together. So what I'm going to do is pull them slightly closer together, flatten them, and then I'm going to just enlarge that so it's how I think it should be, which is roughly the right size. Now this is a common mistake I used to make at the start, and I'm sure lots of other people do, is what you're doing is you're seeing the whole area as the eye, and so you think, oh, it should be bigger, but this is just this white bit. Yeah. Now while I'm here, I'm going to also sample this down to a smaller size. I think it's already got a mask on it, yeah. Okay. And I'm going to bring this one down as well to be then next to it. Zoom in. So I've got her eyes in roughly the right place. I think it just needs to go over a tad. Good English word, that, tad. You see, and now you see I've got them where I've actually sketched the eyes, which is quite a good look. You see, I did that without looking. If you can remember, I said I'm going to lower them slightly, so I'm going to just pull them down a little bit. Okay, and now what we can do is build up the rest of the eye. What I do now is I mask it so it's got a marquee around it. Hide the marquee, and then I can now start building up the eye and everything. So the first stage is to grab his eye colour, which is kind of like this rich grey blue. Okay, and what you've got to do is to then evaluate how much of the eye is taken up with his pupil and iris. I'm going to say about that much. They tend to touch, but I tend to find it it's nicer to have a little bit of space on the image. Now from now on, this is where I don't clone everything to the opposite one. I've got to do everything hand drawn. Like so, and just go over to this side again to see how I feel that the eye should be. The reason to do this non-cloning now is to give it some individuality instead of looking like a completely mirrored image. Both sides have got to look slightly different because you're not exactly the same on both sides. Okay, so that's that done. Now what we need to do is just simply basically build up the colouring of the eyes to make it look like they're 3D. As I said, this is a funny thing about the way sorry, I'm yawning. The simple thing you have to understand is, as I said, eyes are white or they seem white, and this is actually sampled from there. That looks white, this looks grey. This is because it's surrounded by the light pink colour at the moment. So when you're in the eye area, everything becomes darker, and these will start illuminating and become whiter as you add the shading. So you've got to believe in yourself, and this is why I do the sampling, that as you pick colours, because they're coming from an exact photograph of somebody sitting there in the right lighting, this is going to look okay. As I said, the right eye is going to look different to the left, so I'm going to have to keep my fingers crossed, paint it all in, like so. And what I do is I just tend to move very slightly, and this is where I now put the opacity down to around about 80 and the flow down to 80, because what you can do, if you've got a Wacom tablet with pressure sensitivity, is very lightly paint over your picture and it'll blend it together. You see, depending on how much I press down, it's going to add that colour to the area. Okay, so and then we'll just move in a little bit more. This is why it takes 8 hours because you have to be very patient sampling as you go closer and closer to the dark area. You can't just say I'm going to choose light and I'm going to choose dark and bam, there we go. It's going to look like a nicely realistic eye. You've got to slowly build it up. And this is the same for the rest of the picture. Like so. And it's all to do with observation skills as well, because you have to see there's a little bit more light there. So I'm not going to do it all dark. And finally I'm sure it's probably going to be black. I'm going to just build that into there. This will change obviously as we go as well, because it's not going to be perfect the first time I paint it. And you'll also notice around most people's irises there's a very faint banding of colour as well, so I tend to do that because this iris is going to change a lot as I colour it. So I'll just give that blending option there. Okay, so we've got that. Now what I could do is just zoom in. When you zoom in as well, you can almost see the differences in the pixels. He's got quite yellow bits in that eye, and what I can do is sample the lighter area exactly. And because I want to do this as a caricature and not an exact replica of the picture, what I can do now is just add my own artistic license and build in some colours that I want, just to give it a little bit more of a glow and a feel of humanity, because you don't want it too dark. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of that colour in his light area, like so. And at the first stage I'm happy with that eye. It looks a little bit like that one. You'll notice as well on his more open eye he's got some reddy bloodshot effect as well, but it goes blue there. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is to start building up this one. This is where the pressure sensitivity bit comes in. And it's always good to have this Wacom. I'd rather have one of these Wacoms you can draw on the screen. I call them chintz. I'm sure lots of other people call them different things. But the things I can't afford on those. And but the thing is, the more expensive you Wacom, the more quality you're going to have with your pressure sensitivity. Plus, it's always good to keep your plug-in up to date as well, and make sure you check the availability for improvements in the plugin. So now I want to see if I can try and get some of that yellow that I said I saw. What you can do is just literally tap it around there. Now that doesn't look nice, so what you do is you then sample the background colour, and because it's on a blend option, I can go over the top of that and it starts looking okay because it's blending the two colours together, like so. Same a little bit there. Okay, now as I said, it goes to a little bit of a bluey colour down here. So what I want to do is just bring a blue-grey as the shadow underneath the eye and make it blend into that reddish colour. Okay, like so, and just darken the corner off. That will become more apparent when we actually do the surrounding of the eye, like so. This is what I tend to do, build up each eye like so. And I think what I'll do is I'll do this pupil, but I won't show you how to do the other eye, and I'll come back to you and show you how I can do the rest of it. Now you see, I'm just going to talk you through this a little bit. I'm not happy with the amount of glow there is on this eye here, so what I'm going to do is put a little bit of more whitening there, maybe just a touch there, just to give it that kind of rounded white look. Okay, so what we're going to do now is do his pupil, and this one's terrible to look at for his pupil, so what I'm going to do is bring over the other image, like so. Oops, I have this problem with it, for some reason it flicks back. Now I've got to zoom in quite high, and you'll notice this is what happens with most people, is that they've got a blacker band around the edge. So what I'm going to do is start off by giving, you've got to be careful that you don't end up start painting on the reference image. So deselect. So I'm going to do that, and he's got these kind of really nice, sharp, bright blue parts into his eye. This is more to do with hand control now than anything else, but because these are very rough drawings, I don't need to be too accurate with the eye. And if you look at my previous stuff, you'll see that it looks quite good when you zoom out, and that's the whole point of this. I've got to just stick in his pupil so I know where to do all this other. I'm going to use the psychology of what people say about people's pupils. His, because he's been shot in a studio, is quite small. But if they say if you give a bigger pupil, it looks more lovable. So I'm going to do that to Gordon, because we all want to love Gordon. Like so. Now what I can do, because it's got all this edging on it, is just, all I do is a circle first. I don't want to weigh myself down with trying to do the details if it's not going to be the right colour, and then I slowly do this kind of pulling out, like so. And you'll notice there's some lighter, darker blue. This is why it's important to do the sampling, because you just basically build it up as you go along. Looking at his reference image as much as you can, because you want it to look like Gordon's eye, so you look at Gordon's eye. Now you'll notice here it's mostly dark, so we don't need to worry too much about all that, so I'm only going to do the detailing where it's necessary. And you'll notice as well I've got the wrong side of his eye. This is his left eye on my picture, and that's his right eye, so I'm not going to make it look too exactly the same, because you can't see where the effect is on that one. What I tend to do is, even though in a studio this, as I said, is darker than this one, I wanted the eyes to have some life when you're looking at the caricature, so I tend to give them the same depth of glow and everything. But saying that, I will make a difference on these. You'll notice again, as I said, there's this whitening aspect here. And finally, just the biggest highlight section, like so. And you may find there is a little bit there, you can see it. Patches of lighter blue in the rim area. Now what we're going to do is obviously darken all this off. Oops, I didn't mask it. Okay. That's because I moved that reference image. So let's just remask it. Cancel. You notice I clicked it twice there and a box appeared. If you do click a masking option, which is Alt on a layer, if you do it the second time, it expands it slightly, because you'll notice that there's some softening around the edge. And I found that helps a little bit, because obviously you don't want a whitening edge around the entire image. Now, because this is on the left and it's darker, I am going to do this darkening a little bit more here. That's very dark around there, but you see there is some highlighting in even in the dark. So what I'm going to do is that. Forget about the studio light highlighting at the moment. Okay, so I'm kind of happy with that. We're not looking at this one, we're looking at this one. As I said, I wanted to just give a little bit more of the glowy effect. So, say I'm happy with that. I do want to do a little bit of this highlighting inside the shadow area, but we will, as we do the shading up above the eye and everything, we'll probably darken everything a lot more anyway. Like so. And the last bit for this is to obviously give this studio light effect. I'm not going to copy the one exactly, I do my classic one, but first thing you need to do is look at this. You think that's black, it's not black, so I'm going to make it black at the top. And then give this kind of, I'm actually going to give that a little bit lighter, and I always do it as a bluey grey. And I tend to do something like that. Because if you do anything to do with chroming when you're doing your digital painting, you'll know that there's this kind of dark and light effect that appears. I'm just going to darken it slightly, and for some reason I just find it helps with eyes as well. So anyway, I'm going to sample the colouring for the highlighting. One thing you can do as well is you could actually put a couple of dots here to help it a little bit, but basically I'm just going to do a classic highlighting thing, which is like that shape. I blend it so it looks like that, and then what we do is we grab the pure white, do it softer to start with, and then here you just do it solid. Okay, maybe just add a little bit there, and that's basically one of the eyes done. So if I zoom out, as I said, you can see that the further you go out, it looks more realistic. You know, if I zoom in, it looks just like a lot of paint strokes. Okay, and that's why these caricatures work so well when we're looking at them on the internet, for instance. Simply because, you know, these start off at 7,000 by, what was it, 9-ish thousand. So that's quite big. Okay, but anyway, I'm going to finish the other eye and I'm going to come back to you. Okay, so both eyes are in place now. I'll just stick in the thing. You can see roughly in the right place. This could change, but the next thing is I've got to try and rough in all the kind of areas that's going to make his eyes look like Gordon Ramsay's eyes. At the moment they're just two eyes. Okay, they've got the rough shaping of Gordon Ramsay's eyes, but could you tell it's Gordon Ramsay? No. This is the thing that happens when you're doing caricatures. Your face has certain characteristics, and it's not just a specific part like the eye, it's the way that the eye curves over there, these two marks and the bridge mark and things like this. And what you've got to do is be very kind of careful and specific about how you do these, else it won't end up looking like the person it's meant to be. Now again, I just simply mask the area, and I tend now, I'll name that eyes. I tend now to do everything with a base colour on one layer, and then I jump onto a new layer to do all the colouring. It just helps just in case you mess everything up. Now what I'm going to do is try and find the darkest area around here. Don't worry about this, this is going to be done later. And what I've got to do now is to look at the, see, it's not, his eye distance there is a lot bigger than what I've done. So what I've got to do is basically give the toning of his eyes the depth of where it needs to be, like so. This is probably where you're going to start finding that his eyes are in the wrong place, because this distance here doesn't seem as far as that distance there. Okay, so what I could do while I'm at this stage is think to myself, do I make the eyes bigger, do I draw them closer together, all this kind of stuff. Also what I'm going to do quickly is just disable that mask. Yeah. I think his eyes need to go slightly closer together. So what I need to do is kind of find the halfway point, which is, say, there. Alright, I don't know whether I can do them both together with the shading and there's a quick way of doing this. I'll do the quick way to make it so, just deselect that. I'm going to just bring that much, okay. Now I'm going to just duplicate both of those and take them this much. Oops, I didn't do the eye, did I? Okay. It's not allowing me to do both of them at the same time. Oh, there you go. So what I need to do is to have them close together. Now what I can quickly do is to delete the ones on this side for that, and then on this side for that. It's not the easiest way to do it, but I just wanted to do it so I can show you the process as I'm doing it. So okay, his eyes are closer together now. In the center, I just want to, I could use that, but I'm just going to remove it. Okay, now what I've got to do, if I just open up that again, is to fill all this kind of top area with the colour that's appropriate for that area. You notice I sampled it from down there. There's nothing really in that area that's that colour, so I've got to find a darker colour. Put the mask back on. Go to my layer for doing the shading, which I did there. I've also got to squash those two things down together. So there's my shading layer. And I'm just going to really quickly bash in that kind of top colour, because you'll notice it's instantly darker than what it was, even though that's a light tone for the top of the head. Okay. Now that all goes as far down as his eyebrows, so I'm just going to do it round to about there. Okay, we're going to deal with the forehead later, so don't worry too much about the fact that I just blocked that in quickly. Okay. Now what we've got to do is also, oops, let's just bring it down to there, like so. Now this is darker as well, and this is where the bridge comes in. You notice his bridge comes around about there. But this is what I was colouring there, so what we've got to do is do this part as well. And you'll notice this is where the blending thing... Oh! You notice what I've just done? I've done it onto this level I didn't want to do, so I'm just going to sample that quickly, go back in time, so everything disappears. You've got to be very careful not to do the layer you're supposed to be doing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just repatch that all in. That's why another reason it takes 8 hours is because you make so many mistakes in the processing. So I'm going to do it down to about there. Don't worry if you cut off some of the colouring you've already done. That's the nice thing about this way of using this painterly brush style, is that you can just quickly bash it back in again. It doesn't take too much effort really. Okay. So that's where I was. Zoom in, resample this colour, do the... You see that one is a lot deeper than that one, so I'm going to use this later on to give him some extra, what do you call it, I don't know, oomph in his eyebrow area. Now you see this is where the blending starts happening. Sorry for the noise, just people leaving in their car. And what you've got to try and figure out is where that line, see here, it's kind of like a different shape, it's like that kind of shape. Okay, and then also he has that kind of line coming across there as well. Okay, I'm not going to do the detailing at the moment, this is not what it's about, it's just to get the shape I need to make it look like, guess who, Gordon Ramsay. Okay, so the highlighting of the nose, the blending of this is going to happen later. Like so. And because we're on a separate layer to the eyes, and that's why I do it on a separate layer, I can just paint underneath the eyes, which is a big help actually. Okay, like so. Do the opposite side. This is now, because the light's coming from this side's going to have a lot more of this shading all over, whereas this is going to have some highlighting there, so I'm just going to bash all that in there. He's also got a little dent there, like so, but all this is going to change soon anyway, because I'm going to darken it and play with it. Okay. So that's what I do next. The next stage is to focus on one eye. I tend to go this eye, that eye, I don't know why. Okay, so what I'm going to do is get this guy again. Oops. Make sure I've deselected it. Place it there, because I need some area around the top of his head. Close the one I don't want. And then I can start building up the dark bits as well, and you'll see, hopefully, Gordon Ramsay's eyes taking shape. So I grab the darkest bit now. And you'll notice I've got to try to create this pattern, because he's got this undercut to his thing. He's kind of like that shape. Okay. And it goes to there, which is very close to the thing. It will need some blending between the two parts, so I do give it some space and then cut round to that. And as I say, This is going to have some blending going down to there as well. You notice it's got a kind of a little hook. So I'm just going to just put that in for there and for now. This is going to have some dark bits around it. And then that's going to go down to there. Now let's pull out and just see if that gives a kind of a feeling of Gordon Ramsay. It's hard to say at the moment because we need to blend it all together. This is the thing about the time it takes, you know. I could be doing this for an hour or so, thinking I'm getting somewhere, and it doesn't look like what I'm supposed to. But you notice he's obviously got like the bag under his eyes that most people have. So we stick that in. One thing I have to point out at this point is that's the real photograph of him. I've got to keep constantly thinking while I'm doing this, I've got to make it a little bit more cartoonized or caricaturized, so I've got to make things more emphasized. Okay, now let's just stick in this version of his eye as well, which is a little bit more different. And again, this is from a kind of a slight 3/4 angle. I'm doing it straight on, so I've got to try and imagine what it's going to look like when it's flat as well. But basically I'm going to do that, and you notice there is a little gap between his eyes on this one and so forth. Again, I'm just going to stick that in. You see, this is what happens when you don't do this masking thing properly. It goes lighter, but I'm going to play with that later. Okay, so that's roughly how his eyeballs are looking with his socket. Okay, again, it doesn't maybe look like Gordon Ramsay at the moment, but we're going to play with it a lot. And at this point I'm going to have to see if the actual distance between here and here is the same, because it's going to look really terrible if he's off centre. The way I can do that is obviously just quickly measure. I can never remember where the measuring tool is. Get ruler tool. So I'm going to go from the corner of his eyes to there, and that is 738. From here to there is 758. So there's about 10 pixels difference, which, to tell you the truth, that this ratio is not that big. So don't worry about that much, but I'm just going to nudge him over slightly with the eyeballs. Which means these parts of his skin tone as well need to nudge over, because that's where the look and feel go. Okay, deselect that. You know, this obviously creates an enormous big hole then where the line used to be. So just got to patch that in. That's the nice thing about doing digital stuff as well, is like you can just keep altering things as you go along. It's not as though it's got to stay exactly perfect, and this is why I probably moved away from doing traditional painting, because you make a mistake in that and you've got to live with it basically. Or you spend lots of time recreating it. So now what we've got to do is make these eyeballs look like what they are. Now this line here is this line. Let's make this smaller so you can see what I'm talking about. This line here is this line. I've got to add some of this, which is a darker tone, over the top like that. Again, it's got to go to that bridging area, which is roughly there, and then it kind of circles around and comes down into that shape. Okay, patch that in. Also, I've got to decolorize all this, because it's not going to be light, is it? Because his eyes aren't light. Like so. And then, as I said with the eyes, I just sample as much as I can all the time to bring in the colours I need to make it look the depth and feel I want. Now he's got some eyebrows, so I'll do that later. I tend to do that kind of stuff right at the end. I don't know why, but I do. Okay, so the blending takes many stages, and I've got to just try and find part of it that I think is good to now at this point you'll see there's this line and it comes across, and I haven't got that, so I've got to try and build this into this. This is where the changing of the eye section probably has to come into place. So I've got to deselect everything, and then I've got to build this dark section across here, like so. But you also notice that obviously comes, say, down. I didn't squash the eyes down, did I? So he's got both of his eyes. And so what we've got is that more of a angular eye feature. And this is one thing you've got to be very, very careful of all the time, is that his eyes have got to be the most important thing. If his eyes don't work, it won't look like the person. So every minor detail you can stick into it is going to help it look like who it's supposed to be. Okay, so just putting that very soft bit there. Do that colour into there. Another thing, a little trick, is you've got to remember eyes are full of moisture, and this is why, even though the lighting is not directed at that point, there's lots of reflective bits and pieces in there, because it can grab light from anywhere. And because he's in a studio, there's lots of bouncing light, and what you can do is just enhance bits yourself, and the more kind of moistury feel there is in there, the more alive the character's going to look and feel. Okay, like so. So that's his eye, more Gordon Ramsay. Whilst I'm here and I'm on the eye layer, I'm going to pick a dark layer. Actually, what I'm going to do is probably sample that, which is nearly black probably. Yeah, you see it's a lot different to that. But we're also going to use that as the kind of the bridging tone for the eye and the flesh above it, because otherwise you can see there's a strong line which we don't want. And because it's very dark, it blends in very nicely with the actual dark colour of the eye, top of the eye, which is black-ish, well, blackish, like so. And we can just follow it down, and then that will also get rid of that lighting effect there. And again, his eye breaks over into a kind of a triangulated corner, like so. Alright, and we'll just pick that colour there, that's what this is, like so. So that's basically Gordon Ramsay's rough feature and feel. Okay, I'm going to play with this a little bit more and come back, because as I said, I can't keep recording all of it, but when we come back, this eye will look as much like Gordon Ramsay as possible, and I would have done some work on this one as well. So basically the eyes are there now. I think you can tell, okay, it's not exactly the same as Gordon Ramsay, but the thing is they have Gordon Ramsay look and feel. That's the best way of putting it. You know, he has this kind of cut down with his upper eyelid, and we've got the same there. Obviously this is going to change a little bit in a minute because I've got to do his forehead now. And it, you know, I've asked, and people think it looks like Gordon Ramsay. Now, the way I work is, I work from top to bottom, leaving the hair till last, but basically I do the forehead and I work down the nose, the mouth and the chin and then the neck. I get the eyes done first, as I said, because that's important. So what we need to do now is to work on this forehead. And the good thing about Gordon is he has this extremely characteristic forehead, and if I just delete this, you'll see that he's got all these wrinkles. I don't know whether they're permanently. I think he just does it for, wouldn't it be funny if they are there permanently? I think he does it for mostly for show. At this point I can see that this part of the head is different to this, what I've done. So what I'm going to have to do is modify the actual main colouring a little bit, because he hasn't got a round head. He's got a kind of like a squarish head. So what I'm going to, oops, I just did that colour. Anyway, what I'm going to do is just, I think what I need to do is just bring that up there and have it kind of like that. So do the same on the other side. I think what I want to do is I just cut away a little bit of that. So got to do the same on the other side. I forgot. You see why this takes 9 odd hours, because I'm basically correcting things as I go, altering things, taking my time. The first one I did, which was Will Smith, actually was a lot quicker. It was 4 hours because I just literally painted what I saw. I found a photograph I liked and kind of did a caricature based on how I interpreted the photograph. But now, as I'm going further and further along the line, I'm tending to do what I normally do when I'm painting, which is to be more accurate, which is not really what these are about, but I'm still trying to give the fresh painterly look and feel to the actual artwork. So anyway, back to his forehead. You see, he's got all these wrinkles. I think I have drawn them onto the, but as I said, the pencil drawings, you see, that's where his forehead finishes on mine. It's over here now, so I've got to adapt these wrinkles. So what I'm going to do is what I normally do. His hair is going to come, I think, start around about here. So let's just get that colour there. That's where his hair is going to begin. And you'll notice on the thing here, there's certain points where it's highlighted and there's certain points where it's not highlighted. Now, what I've got to try to do is blend all this together. It worked very well with Morgan, which was the last one. I just took my time and slowly brought it all together. Whereas this one, because of the wrinkles are a little bit more, I don't know how to put it, more Gordon-y. It's a bit harder to see how I can blend this instantly. So what I've got to do is to take it easy again, constantly sampling as I go. One thing I can do is throw in all that base colour that I told you about before. For instance, I want to keep that as much as I can. So I'll just blend that back in. You see over here it's very dark. there it's very light, but there's a middle colour, yeah, which is this kind of thing. So based on the idea that if that's his forehead, that's about halfway, that this has got to be that tone, and it kind of matches up with this kind of dent I've just done in his head there, which is actually the same colour. So what, oops, I forgot to mask it again. Okay, so what I'm going to do is zoom out slightly. Just do broad strokes. You'll notice that kind of colour goes over the top as well. Because the thing you don't want to do is spend lots of time being like, oh, I'm just going to do little brush strokes like this. What's the point when it's going to be all the same tone, and I'm going to correct it slightly over the top. So what I'm going to do here is just block it in. Over this side I'm going to choose the block tone there, and that's again is kind of like there. That's halfway, and it goes around there like so, and it goes into that vampire-ish V shape that's caused by his hair being like that. And so what I'm doing is I'm just going to bring it down. Again, all this area is going to get played with, so I don't worry too much about it at the moment. Checking my emails as I go. Anyway, I think that's roughly okay. As I said, this is all going to be highlighted. You see this as well, there's a kind of a central, let me just get rid of that because I've got, yeah, that's a central colour there. His eye is, his head is, which is here, and it's going to come down a little bit from that. So what I can do now, because I've got the basic tone, is I'm going to throw these wrinkles in. And I'm going to choose the dark colour. Well, let's find a dark colour. You can't do it that way, do it that way. Okay. Now, some of these wrinkles, he's got a very slight wrinkle there, but I'm not going to do that one. So, let's do the middle one first. That's his hairline. That's the top of that wrinkle we just did. Hairline wrinkle, it's a little bit lower than halfway. So I'm going to do it there. Like so. That doesn't go all the way across that one side. But you'll notice there's another wrinkle there. And then another wrinkle on top of that. This goes there. And just sort of in between there's a bigger dipped one there, which also goes across all the way there. Okay, that goes like that. And then finally there's another bigger, which also again does this kind of dipping, like so. Again, it doesn't matter if you do it accurately or not. I can correct all this. There's another one goes down there. The final one above his left eye is just like that. Okay, so now I've got all this. Let's just pull that to one side. And this is something to work as a basis. I've got to just spend some time closely doing some aspects of this. I'll just show you one part and then I'll obviously switch off again and fill in the rest. Now, there isn't a solid line. This is the annoying thing about the forehead. You have to imagine it's a kind of a big dome. Yeah, so what you've got to do is to build that dome effect into the design of the blending. And again, we're talking about ribs on top of each other. So there's a dark bit and a highlight, a dark bit, highlight, dark bit, highlight. So what we've got to do is slowly build all this up as a series of gradients. See, that's all probably there like that, and it comes up like that. So that then goes in. But the thing about what I was saying before is there's no solid line. So you have to then blend a little bit of highlight into that bit. Select some of this dark bit again. Blend that in. That comes down as well, because that's going to be part of that thumping. I don't know what it is, whether it's a dent or whatever, I don't know, but anyway. And so forth, and so you just slowly just build this up like so. And luckily, because of this brush I've got and I'm using, it blends together, and there's some bits obviously don't blend as well as others, but we can just spend some time after we've got the basic formation. And it's all to do with observation. It's like there's a little bit of highlight there and there's a little bit of highlight there, but there's a kind of a bit of dark bit there, so what you have to do is to do a very subtle bit of dark there and blend it together. Okay, this is how you basically build up the entire head. I'm not going to show you the whole goddamn head now I do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause again, and you'll come back and you'll see his forehead in place. And just popping in just to show you how it's going. This is basically his forehead. You notice I've done this one. That's just reduce that so you can see. That's this line here. Okay, obviously I've cartoonized it or caricaturized it a little bit by exaggerating certain points, but it's roughly the way Gordon's brow is. Now, I've started doing this bit. I want to blend these two bits together, so what I can do is, instead of sampling off the picture now, I can just literally sample off the artwork. And blend everything together as it is on the previous layers. This area is quite difficult to understand what to do with, because later on I'm going to have all the hair going over it, so it's hard to know how much to show and how much not to show. But you'll notice it kind of has a dark area, which is probably shadow from the hair falling over the top of it. But on top of that you can also see a slight amount of the light area. Now here you'll see it's just completely black, so I'm going to just do that. Didn't grab it properly. And then probably do a little bit down there. Now you notice I'm making very quick brush strokes here. Not too worried about the blending, but then I can grab that bit there, you see, which is a blend of the two, the dark and the relatively dark colour, and then just slowly work it in like that. Okay, so that's for later. I can play with this area later anyway, but I'm just going to fill this bit in here. Even though there's lots of highlight there, it's still darker than the actual colour of the base tone. Right, so this needs to be, see it's a lot softer there, so I'm going to just soften that up. Not all the wrinkles have to be obviously the same thickness and depth and what have you, but as I said, I'll probably review all this once the whole of the forehead is done, just to get a better feeling. I've just got a message from someone on Facebook. One thing I do is I put this on Facebook as I'm doing it, and people make comments. The thing is, what you find about caricaturizing is there's no specific way of doing it, and one thing they do is a lot of people put comments on my posts as I'm showing the progress and thinking that, you know, this is how you do a caricature or something, and it's about how I see Gordon Ramsay. It's not about, oh, this is how somebody else has done a caricature, so you've done it wrong. It can't work like that, because obviously you might as well just copy somebody else's caricature, and it's not about that. So one thing I do when I'm doing the sketching, actually, not at this stage, is look at what other people have done as caricatures. But most of the ones that I see are what you would call extreme caricature, proper caricatures. They're really exaggerating certain parts of their features and things like this. What I'm trying to do with these caricatures is be a little bit more subtle and kind of play on the idea that it's more of a portrait caricature. So it looks like the person, but it has a little bit of distortion as well. That's what I'm hoping to achieve. Whether it works or not, I don't know. People seem to like my Morgan last week. Someone actually made a comment about Morgan that it looks more realistic than a caricature would be, but this is my style. I'm not doing it for magazines and things that tend to do extreme caricatures. I'm actually just trying to make a nice rendering of a famous person in a nice looking way. Whether that's what I'm achieving, I don't know. Problem is, the more I'm getting to do these, the more criticisms I get, or comments, call them comments, and the more difficult I'm finding them to do myself, because as I said before, I'm actually being more and more fastidious about the way it looks and feels, and wanted to make them more real than the original ones I started doing, like Woody Allen and Will Smith. And the funny thing is, they're all supposed to be part of the same set of characters. That's why it's called Celebrity Sunday. But the thing is, obviously, if they change and mutate into a different style as I'm doing them, then that creates a big problem. You see this one here, this wrinkle, it's got a very deep, it actually almost goes up there, but comes down here as well. So I'm just going to change that. So that's got a little bit more darkening there than it normally has. Just breaks into that bit, and then obviously because of that I've got to blend that in, which goes like that. Okay, now just do that. I'm going to stop again in a minute because obviously it's going to take ages to do this and show you all of it, but you can see the way I'm working. I'm just layering until I get the kind of the 3D feel, and B, the look of the actual person I'm trying to achieve, which in this case obviously is Gordon. It's always good to then do this referencing to the picture because then you can see the little, what do you call them, quibbles, I don't know, things about that person that make them a little bit different from everybody else, and that's what makes them unique and noticeable when you're creating a caricature. And obviously some people have a great talent at this and they can see things even I can't see. I'd like to say I like to make it a little bit more obvious and open as a kind of a picture that's like a portrait, but it's actually got some kind of funny characterization to it. Okay, but I'm going to finish the forehead and we'll be back later. Okay, so I'm nearly finishing the final bits to the forehead. I've just got a little bit of highlighting to do here. And again, because it's a caricature, I'm just going to do an extreme version of it. One of the things you have to do as well, because I'm using this brush, is to not worry too much about the blending on some things. When it's like that, he's got a texture on his head, so I have to try to give a feeling of that texture. And that's where this brush can come in, because it has that kind of stippling effect. Like so. There's a little bit of highlighting down here. So now I made a mistake earlier on, which I can't really correct now, of actually painting on the same layer as the eyes, which has created a few issues, but you just plough through it and carry on. It's not a big problem, but it's nice to keep things on separate layers, just to help the whole process of doing all the design work and everything, because it can get to some points where it gets a bit difficult and tricky, and having it on a separate layer just makes that life a little bit easier. Okay, so I've just got to do some highlighting here. That goes all the way down to here. There is a kind of a filter in Photoshop called posterize, and I suppose if you're starting off and you're watching this wanting to know how to do it, finding all these different colours and you're not very good at observing them by just looking at it, you could possibly use posterize to posterize this image, and it'll give you a kind of a limited view of the extreme colours and the mid colours and the dark colours, and you could probably use that as a kind of an interesting way of setting up your palette. And then you just spend some time blending it all together. But for me, I like the idea of trying to guess out how this was going to work. Seeing a light band there and a light band there, and then interpreting it in my drawing as a light band and a light band. Yep. So if I just pull out a little bit, take away the picture, you'll see we have kind of like a head that's a bit similar to his. Okay, maybe there's going to need some extra orange on it. You see some kind of origin, but I'm happy with that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll probably do the eyebrows in, because they're very characteristic on him as well, and then I'm going to have a coffee break, and then we'll move on to the nose and the jaw area, which are the other two important parts. Okay, so I'm kind of comfortably happy with the forehead and the eyes. I think it looks a little bit like Mr. Ramsey. What we're going to do now is move forward and go down. As I said, I move down the face. Next big object is his nose. I always leave the ears till last for some reason, so I'm going to move down the actual face. I'm going to stick his nose in. If you look at the sketch, it kind of like doesn't sit where it's supposed to, which is usually at the bottom of the ears. So if I get rid of that and put in the picture I've been using as a reference, you'll notice, yeah, your nose sits generally at the bottom of your ears, and he's got quite big ears, quite big ears and quite a big nose, it seems, as well. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to patch in the dark areas so I know where to go down to. If I just use that as a guide, even though we're not going to do it properly. And I think, if I'm honest as well, his nose is a little bit wider than I've done it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw kind of an outline where I think the nose needs to go. Let's see. Bye then. I'd say. Okay. What I have to try to be aware of is the actual head is going to come down to this point. Some things I'm going to talk about now as well quickly whilst I'm looking at these two pictures. You notice there's some highlight points under there because he's got white on. Same here, which is going to be useful to do when we get to that point. But you also notice he's got this kind of really cutting scar kind of effect on his chin, which is important to do. That's kind of indicated there, but you notice it's wider and further apart than on mine. This is kind of a cheeky smile, so what I'm going to try and do is emulate that. He's got kind of a smile there as well. This is nothing close to what it's supposed to be like. So when I do this, if I get rid of the neck, I think you'll find that to make it work properly, his lips need to be around about there. But as I said, you notice, can you just see there's a kind of like a step there? Let's just zoom in to show you. Okay, it goes down and across. When you're doing caricatures, you need to emphasize those things. Okay? So what we're going to do, now you see I've done it on the actual sketch. This is just the line I'm going to use to build the mouth. But as I said, I've got to give him a kind of a cheeky smile. So this is how you do a cheeky smile, is you basically keep one side flat and the other side raises up. Let's get rid of the sketch. And we just do that to clean it up a little bit. That's just the starting point. It's not going to be any development at the moment on that. You'll see that his lips come further out than his nose, so I may even have to do that a little bit more. And it also has this flat, you see it goes flat, so I'm going to just do that to there and then go flat. Just do that out a little bit, okay, like so. Right, now what we can do is concentrate on his nose, but you'll notice I've done it non-central. So whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to have to do the mouth as well, but what we've got to do is move it over so it centralizes a little bit, like so. Okay. Now, noses are kind of complicated things. You notice on this one it's just dark and light, and okay, that'll give the impression of 3D. But this one's got a nicer feel to it. It's got a kind of a gradient on a part of the face. But this is the important thing. You have these dark patches either side. This one's obviously darker than that one, and that's what's going to make it look incredibly 3D. And that's what we need to try and achieve. Saying that, what we're going to do is patch in all the kind of mid-tone areas. I don't know if you can see that. He's got a kind of a cut there. So basically from there to there to there, he's got this kind of look, which is also countered by the fact he's got this strong dark bit going down there as well, which we'll put in. So what I'm going to do is just whack all that in. That's where his smile part. See how far away it is from the sketch? It's a long way. This is what you have to learn to do, is to build things up as you go along, not trust your sketch exactly, unless you're fantastically good at sketching caricatures. I just tend to do it just to get a lightness, and I spend an afternoon sometimes just drawing these things just to get a list of people, because sometimes I don't have enough time to do it on the day before, which I usually used to do. So it's good to have a stock of them just lined up for you to... Okay, I've got it. Excuse me. We've just got to try to figure out how bulbous his nose is. What I mean by that is this area here. Yeah, he's got a kind of a dark patch there, so what we're going to have to do here is build the dark line down, and like most people you have a bridge, so he's going to come in slightly from the bridge and then it's going to come out like that. Again, this is all going to blend in, so don't worry if it looks a bit kind of stupid at the moment. Okay, do that, and then you'll see that that's, as I did before, it kind of has to line up to that. So that, and then that comes around. He's got kind of like semi-chubby cheeks. Okay, like so. This one is going to be more straight down because he's actually grinning on this side, so it's going to stick out more. So this is more of a straight. Oh dear, I need some water. Straight line down. And then we can just bash all that in. There is some highlight there. And obviously we're going to do the bit around the mouth later. Okay, so that's his general setup for his face. One thing I didn't do, which is not on this one, I'm going to turn that one off now, is this dark area I told you about on the other side of the nose, even though it's on the highlight side, because that's the direction the light's coming. I'm saying that, I think his light on this picture is coming from the top, isn't it? So what I've got to do here is to see that it comes down here, and then it builds that bulbousness in, which comes round. And then this goes a little bit higher than what I did for the build, like this one is. It might go even higher, but I just want to stick it in just to be aware of it. Okay, so that's roughly his nose in place. You can use as a guide. You can see this is the kind of little hook thing I've done there. So it does come a little bit further in, so probably there. Like so. Okay. Now most of this is now highlight. You see he's got kind of a cut there. Okay, but the thing is it's what's necessary and needed to get this working, so that needs to come down there. I'm just going to do it a little bit lighter than it is so I can see the difference. Like so. Okay, so just zoom out. That's his basic structure of his face. What's going to make him look more like Gordon is obviously the things that will cut into his face to, I don't know where you can see this, look, is this interesting shape. It comes down here, but it comes out in a bulbous effect, which gives him that kind of fat baby chubby cheek look. Okay, so what we're going to do is do that later. Okay, I'll stick my neck on now. He's not got much neck showing, so okay. Now one thing I've noticed as well at this point is that his head's too big for the palette, so you know the hair is going to go off screen, and also there's not enough room to do a decent enough chef outfit, so sometime I'm going to shrink it down, but I'll get his face finished first and then I'll do that. I made a big decision to squash his face slightly. Didn't like it that it was that fat, so what I've done, if you look, let's go back to this. That's how big it was. This is the new reduced size. I'm hoping it's going to work. I don't know what to do if I don't. But looking at this picture, he didn't look as fat as he was. Okay. The thing is, I've got to try to maintain this height in his head here. If you look there and down, it's roughly half. Yeah. So what I've got to try to do is achieve that, and at the moment it's not halfway down. I'm sure some of the hair is going to make it even more higher. So either I compress everything down a little bit more, or I'm going to have a little bit of problem later on. So we'll see how it goes. I can't do any more extensions to the face though, that's the thing. Basically got to keep working at it, and this is where it gets a little bit difficult now. I say for instance I've got to move that up slightly, just about there. So now what I'm going to do now is concentrate on the under eyes and the cheeks, because that's the next bit down. Press the wrong button, making a mask. Okay, so I'll move that down to there, and we can zoom in a little bit, get this area filled out. Okay, so let's see if we can get that done quite quickly. There's kind of strong pinks underneath your eyes. Right, so I'll show you this little trick I wanted to show you earlier, which can help it look a little bit more real and alive as well. So what I want to do is just bash in their basic colours. Unfortunately, a lot of this I've actually done on top of this way. That I told you before, it becomes problematic because I wanted to do all the face work on the layers for the face, but you'll notice now that part of it is on that layer, so I've got to do this to blend everything together. So probably this bit I'll just keep it on this layer and hope for the best. Now you see there's this cut here and then this cut here. We'll do this one as just a line, just to get us to understand where it is. I think that's about it for the base colour for that area. Now what I'll try to do is I'll do both sides at the same oops, you see I'm on the wrong layer for doing that kind of brave movement. That's where it comes a problem now when we start dealing with the eye area. That's not a strong enough colour. Okay, so what we're going to do here, let's try and do this. Is this all on? Yeah, that's what, okay, so I can do this one on the correct layer without messing the eye up. Making sure I don't paint over what's already been done. Okay. Right, so let's bash it in as quick as possible because it's going to be blended anyway, so it doesn't really matter if it's. We're just trying to get the whole brush feel. Okay. Now let's just look at that one. This has got to cut down further, like so. And then the opposite side of this line, there's going to be another colour, like so. Okay. You'll notice here this has a kind of line that comes out and it helps blend that into that. Okay, so just stick that and keep that there for the time being. Now it gets a little bit more interesting because here we have a dark colour that comes down to there. It actually comes out of this dark area like that as a kind of a V shape, like so, and then there's also a dark bit that comes down further down the nose, which includes the bridge, but then like so. Okay. People think caricatures are easy. Okay, let's move on. So what we're going to do now is to build all this. This is the secondary area. This is all this bit. Like so. Alright. Now I've got a coffee here, it's getting cold, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause. I'm not actually going to do any new work. I'm just literally going to pause it while I have my coffee, and I'll come back and I'll detail these bits. Okay. I'll carry on. I was going to bash that in because I'm tired of seeing it with holes in it. No, I didn't mask it. Okay. Always remember to mask things, he says, being the biggest culprit of not masking. Okay, so the sound went a little bit here in the previous recording, so I'm going to re-record it to explain what I'm doing. What we're doing in this process is actually adding all the details to the eye area. As I said to you before, the eyes are the most important part of the whole process, and it needs to be effectively done so you can actually capture that feeling that people want to relate to the picture. Okay, now everybody has certain qualities to their eyes. Many people have, especially at the ages most of these celebrities have these crow's feet and things like that, but this is a thing about finding a decent reference image of a celebrity, is to see how these wrinkles and highlights appear on the face. And you'll notice as I'm building up, and this is why it takes quite a while, I look for those very fine aspects of the image that make it more easy to define the character. Now the thing about certain people, I don't know whether that's why Morgan was such a success last week, is because he's got lots of wrinkles as a senior celebrity, then it looks like an old person. Whereas if you look at this photograph, and I've had this comment because I'm recording this post finished and presented, that people are saying he looks too soft and cute for Gordon Ramsay. Now maybe I haven't spent enough time giving enough of the highlights and creases and things like that on the face, but the thing is, this is what's related to with the reference image I'm using. It looks like the reference image, and so I have to accept that that's what Gordon Ramsay looks like. But at the end of the day, the slow process I have to go through to get all the information and everything together is important to give that more kind of realistic look and feel that a lot of caricatures don't tend to have. They're done very quickly, maybe within a couple of hours maximum, and they just rush through them, getting the actual look and feel rather than the actual texturing and things like that. And I try to do something different. Now here, there's some aspects of the eyes which help give it kind of a little bit more life as well. You'll notice on the photograph there is this highlighting on the bottom eyelid, which I do then approach and do in a moment, but the thing is, you've got to understand the depth of the shade and the highlight together, so it's important, as you're seeing here, that you blend everything in together. Now you could, if you wanted to, make it more abstract and more simplistic by just doing strong strokes. I like the idea of blending as much as I can. As I said, when you then go down to a smaller ratio like I just did there, you'll notice that the actual look and feel gives you the perception of vision, and your eye fills in all the details. Okay. You'll notice we're into maybe an hour and a half of a 3-hour video, which, as far as the process goes, is maybe 4 hours of drawing and painting, and I'm still mainly on the eye. That's why it's important to get this right, because when you look at any real person, you look straight at their eyes. You don't look at the tip of their nose or their ears. You look at their eyes, and so it's very important to get this right first. And this is why I spend so much time doing it, to get that look and feel. And the end result is obviously the judging factor. Okay. You'll notice I'm sampling over and over again to get the feel as well. When we're building upon layers, it also has this problem of giving hard edges, depending if you make a mask or not. So one thing you have to do as well is to actually do this kind of overlay build up where you soften the edges of the different layers. Now this is where I'm going to start doing this special little thing that isn't on the photograph, but I noticed when I did Morgan. It's because your eye is full of water. Well, not full of water, but it has water protecting it and making it flow better. Is if you do this very thin line like I'm doing now with a highlight, it looks like it's full of that moisture that helps lubricate it. And it just adds an extra more human feel to the actual finished drawing. So that's something I've learnt, and this is now the highlight section I was talking to you about. Because what you have to realise is the skin has certain moisture qualities, especially around the eye, and if you had those, it makes it look like the person's really living. Okay, so I'm going to just basically paint a little bit and leave the recording going. Slowly I just sample different pieces of the image above, and it eventually gets that kind of blending that you want, but it also gets the natural colours. And if you look as you're painting, you'll see that there's a multitude of different colours available in this actual photograph. You know, it's not just pink, white and dark pink for the dark areas. There's oranges, orange pinks, red pinks. Even some of it's probably got little bits of blue or purple pinks, and it all helps to build up a more natural view. So don't be afraid to do all this sampling, and it takes time, but it also gives you the nice result at the end of it, as proven with some of the other comments I've had with some of the other celebrities I've done. Again, if you look at the just reference some of my other paintings while I'm talking. If you actually look at the Tom Waits one, for instance, there's a point when I was painting that where I didn't think it was going to work, because one side of his face was this bluey pink colour, and the other side was a more kind of orangey white pinky colour, and it seemed like, how the hell can that work? But what you do when you're looking at the photograph that you're sampling from is it looks okay in real life, so you just have to wait until everything's put together and blended, and then for some magical reason it all fits together. Like if you look here on the Gordon as I'm painting the eye, on the temple area just above to the left, you'll see that the pink has got a little bit more of a grey blue kind of colour in it, and that's reflective lighting from when he was in the studio that you would not normally think if you were just painting this clean that the portrait would have. But because you're looking at a photograph, you can see that it works in the photograph, that there is a slight grey highlight there, and you paint it in and then it looks okay. So you have to trust your feelings as you're painting. Spending hours doing these eye images. Again, one thing I do as well is I add lots of different bits that may be not featured in the final picture. But overall it helps the eyes work. And there you go, there's the two finished eyes after maybe 4 hours of painting. But it's the thing that people focus on, so it's important to do it. Okay. Now I'm going to just do a blending of this side of the face, and you'll notice there's lots of grey, dark browns as well, and things like that, which are all different from that eye area that we're looking at there. And on this side you'll notice that there's a different colour scheme as well for all the shading, but I'm going to slowly build both of these areas up so that it has the kind of the rounded 3D effect of his cheeks. It's important to, as I said, I tend to move down, and you'll notice that I always have to also work methodically. It's not a case of bashing in different colours and being happy with it. I have to keep going backwards and forwards to the different colours when I notice certain sampling has changed. This is an area of the nose that allows you to create this kind of bridging between the highlight and the shadow. Everybody has this. This is where the skin pulls over the bone aspect of your nose, and it can vary differently from different people. And you'll notice on most photographs it's dark on both sides, even if it's lit from one side or the other, and that just helps the nose stand forward, because you tend to find that the nose has a highlight on it, and it works very well. So we just patch that in, sampling and filling as we go. Again, I'll probably come back to this. It's not going to be the final result. One thing I've noticed actually over the time I've been doing all these things is caricatures with hair take longer than the ones without hair. I don't know whether it's a frustration in filling the hair at the end, but I've noticed also, like my first caricature I did of Will Smith took 4 hours. If you look at it closely, it is quite minimal next to some of the other ones I've done. And what you tend to find, and this is my nature, is I'm trying to become more and more precise as I do these over the different weeks. I notice here, for instance, I'm blending the nose and I'm spending time sampling almost every millimetre from one side of his nose to the other, just so I can get that kind of look and feel that's close as possible to the photograph I'm using. Now, I wouldn't have done that before when I started doing these, because it was about speed and immediacy. Now it seems to be more about accuracy. Now it depends on the way you want to draw them, but a little bit of blending doesn't hurt getting it to look right. But you've got to try to get that balance between what can get something. Because I do these on a weekly, well, not weekly, a Sunday basis, I have to get them finished in a day. So while I'm painting, I have to think, how much time and effort am I going to spend doing this and get this finished and completed. And it gets to a point when it gets to around about lunchtime, which it is about now, when I'm halfway down the face thinking, am I going to be able to get this done in the afternoon? The rest of it, I've got the ears, the body, the hair, the jaw and the nose and the mouth. And so you've got to almost be self-critical as you're painting, and say, there's enough is enough, and you've got to get it done. So you stop it and move on to the next bit. But then there's something that always kind of niggles at you, and you go back and correct things and blend things and whatever. I suppose this is what I'm doing now, is that, I did the nose part of the bridge earlier, but I'm now noticing that it's got different colour values. So maybe this is because I've filled in those other colours of the nose and things like that, I don't know. But one thing is to correct, one thing is to then stop and say, enough is enough, and move on to the next bit, because the nose and the mouth is the next complicated parts. And the nose will help in that three-dimensional aspect that you need to get that character looking as likable as possible. So I do get to a point when I just, you see I'm making brush strokes there, not being too precise about the blending, which I like. This is a process I do like, just blocking in things, hoping that it's not going to need too much playing. Saying that, if you look at one of the ones I did earlier, which is Tilda Swinton, now talking about women obviously have a smoother skin effect and texture, so I spent hours trying to get her face to look as smooth as possible and things, and that's all in the blending process. And that's a frustration, because obviously women are ones that are being more critical of, because when you look at them they have this, I don't know, but maybe those photographs you see as reference are photoshopped in the first place, so you've got to try to make them as pristine and clean as possible, because that's what people expect from these celebrity females, whereas men, they can be grungy, they can be rough and textured, whereas it doesn't seem acceptable that women should be. Okay. Now I'll just move in the reference picture down a little bit, because I can then zoom in to look at the certain aspects of what I need to do, which is this cheek again. It's got all these creases that I haven't filled in. I've done that one, but there's a little bit there, for instance, I haven't done. Now, one thing I haven't told you is the shortcut keys for, and what you need to learn to do when you're doing these is to learn how to use the keyboard to speed the process up as well. Okay, now because I use the same brush, that's nice, but the thing is I need to change the size up and down. I need to sample like I am now. Now if you're using your keyboard, one thing you'll notice you do is you use the square brackets to do the size of your brush up and down. Okay, and you use the Alt key to do the sampling. So there's no reason to use my cursor at all to go to any of the menus or the other aspects of the tools on the left hand side to do any of this swapping. So everything is done with my Wacom working away, and if I need to change the size of the brush like I just did there, I simply just use the square brackets and it goes up. If I sample like I just did there, I just press the Alt key and it allows me to sample. So I use the left hand as much as I use the right hand, and that is a beneficial factor in doing this. It speeds the whole process up, and the whole thing about blending and drawing can be quite a lot quicker. Now I've got to get this curve. I'll just bash in the main colour I think is there, which is that. You notice that there is not that much variation between the colour I already did around the eye, but as I said, the blending is the important factor. Because the picture I'm actually sampling from is very grainy, then the way that the pixels actually alter the colour can actually be quite hard to sample. So sometimes you do have to really zoom in on the sample picture, because you'll notice there is a minute difference between one pixel to the next, and you're assuming that the highlights are a certain way, but then it's just because one pixel's altered from the general colouring. So what you do is I'm just basically quickly bashing in all these different colours over the highlight or the base pink, which you can still see a little bit there, which needs to be got rid of, because you can see on the sample picture that it has no base colour in there at all. It's only been sampled from the right side. So I just fill it all in, seeing the oranges and the pinks and the blue purples all fitting together to create this kind of moire of pinkish colours to make his cheek work properly. You'll notice I'm moving faster with the brush strokes just to, because he's, well, to be honest, the cheeks and other certain peripheral areas of his face don't need that much attention, so it is easier to just bash in colours like I am at the moment. Otherwise, you'd be there for hours. Saying that, Morgan's got all these kind of mole effects all over his cheeks, so I had to spend some time filling those in. Whereas this one is relatively quite smooth. You can see on the picture that he has got the pore texturing, but there is a point to these caricatures where you say, I'm not going to sit there and do every single pore on his face. You'll notice, especially on the right side of the reference picture, that he does have a poring effect. But that's just getting too crazy. Okay, zoom out, let's have a look. It's building up slowly, but the thing is, when you zoom in, you don't get an overall feel of the rest of the face, so you need to make sure that everything works together. So, it goes to, oops, see, I just made a mistake there. That's another good thing about Photoshop nowadays, it's got this history palette. Zoom out occasionally and just see how much of the spacing needs to be done with this. He's got a kind of a dent in his face there, so I've noticed that on the reference picture, so just adding that. And it's all coming together. One key aspect is to also make sure that you can look at a picture and see those very subtle changes in his skin colouring and texturing. And so when it comes down to, you see, I've got a patch of highlight just under his eye, but then I've got another patch just below, which is the actual bit I've just pointed out. And it's all got to blend together, but it's also got to be noticeable, so there's got to be a dark area that then fits in between, which is so subtle that you can see it, but you can also recognise that there's two highlight areas either side. Now, you may not want to be this precise with your blending and everything. I tend to, and that's why, as I said, they take 8 hours now to do one of these. But the thing is, it's to do with how much you want to respect your final picture. But also, if you've done that much concentration on his eyes to make them that good looking and everything, why make a complete mess of the rest of it? So this is what you do. You have to, as I said, compensate enough blending but enough speed to make the rest of the peripheral parts of his face work effectively but look good. Right, I think what I'm going to do now is to bash in a lot of the dark area on the left side. Maybe not, just a few final subtle parts. Like so. So I'm going to pause and then come back. So I've been playing a little bit to get all the nose part balanced and everything. I've done some more work around there and there. And so now what we've got to do is just really kind of block in a lot more of the colour. I just open up the image so I can see the situation with these eyes. Make a new mask which covers the jaw area as well. So now when I zoom in, I can actually see more of the face that I'm going to be doing. I've got to move it out of the way so I can then play with this side of the face. And I again spend time just playing with the nose, giving it that kind of quality to make it look three-dimensional and so forth. I think after the eyes, the nose and the mouth area are the two areas that people will relate to, and if those three pieces look three-dimensional enough to give it a kind of real quality, then people are going to accept the rest of the caricature. So I do spend time, and the thing about the nose is that depending on where the lighting is on the reference image, the two nostrils are going to look different, which is what I'm noticing here. One side's darker than the other. But you do notice that helps, and you'll notice underneath the actual reference image, the shadow for the nose is to the left, and so that'll help with the three-dimensional qualities as well. So I'm just going to fill this in so I can start building up the three-dimensional quality. You notice I'm speeding up a lot just to give a kind of a rough blending. Now the thing about a nose which makes it work, after I just finish this blending, is that the highlight really does make it work in a way to give it this kind of sticking out feel. At the moment it doesn't still have that kind of feeling that, you know, part of it is actually sticking forward. But as soon as you whack in the highlights aspect, which I'm going to do now, your brain is telling you that, you know, it's forward in the light, it's sticking there, and it has this kind of triangular pyramid effect, and so that's the highest point. And that's the way your brain works, because you see so many different people's faces and you just accept that, you know, the nose sticks out anyway. That, you know, this is the way that it works on the picture as well, and you just make it look three-dimensional then. Now what I'm doing is, you can use this kind of technique for even your own pictures that you're developing. You don't have to use it just for, like for instance, you want to do a picture that has this kind of quality. There's no reason why you can't find a sample picture, even if the picture that you're painting doesn't look like the person you're drawing, just to give indications of how shadows and highlights work, so that it makes your actual fantasy picture or your cartoon image you're doing more realistic as well. Okay, so building up the nose, I'm just going to leave this to paint a little bit so I can just let you watch how I do this. This is part of that highlighting I said that's on his chin. It also affects his nose, obviously, because he's sitting on with a white sheet on him, basically. So that is going to illuminate quite a lot, and so you can also add this to the bottom of his nose, which will be picked up, and then it also becomes darker when you put the shadow underneath his nose. But these are the sort of things, if you were just painting this without a reference photograph, you would possibly forget, unless you're a very clever artist understanding about light and everything. Plus the fact you haven't painted the whiting on the actual caricature yet, so you may not think about adding those extra highlights. But as I said, I tend to do this as I go through it, so I don't want to keep looking back later on when it's finished and see what I think's missing. So this is the incredibly important aspect of actually looking at a reference picture constantly. Whatever you do when you sample something, like I thought I'd sampled the correct dark tone for that part of the nose, but again, once you've painted it in, it doesn't look dark enough, so you sample another pixel and it becomes darker, and this is where the time and the blending comes in, I suspect. Also, dark things will look lighter if the highlighting works well. That's not too good, so I'm going to sample it from another part of the nose, even though it's not exactly as it was on the photograph. As I said, you have the artistic license there. Okay, sampling that colour now. It's got a little bit of orange in it, which helps also to give him a little bit of colour. But also we need to blend it together with that kind of line. As I said, there's no solid lines like I did with the forehead. It's got to blend so you can see the difference between the dark and the light, and then we just whack in the highlighting aspect. At some point I'm going to have to put some white into this. It will just help give the kind of depth of the colour. Okay, I'm going to do this part of his mouth now, which is kind of like framed luckily with these lines when he's grinning, or just when you have a kind of a build-up of flesh on the cheeks, you'll get these lines. So I'm just going to put them in. They may change, like I said, but at the moment I need a guide, and you'll notice that it does bend slightly there, which means he is kind of slightly grinning to the left side of his mouth. Again, I want to add a little bit of caricaturization on it, so it's not exactly normal, it's actually more emphasized. And then we just do the build-up of the blending again. Adding all the kind of guidelines which will be blended later to strengthen the actual process of actually seeing where parts of his face are. You notice there is this big thick line of darkness down the side of his face, which helps with this kind of cheeky shape of his lower part of his mouth area, where he's got a curve as he's grinning to his cheek. This is going to help define that, so it's good to put it in. And as you'll probably notice, it does build up, and there's a little highlight point we need to add. So I'm going to just sample a little bit with that highlight, and then bring down that kind of line as well. I suppose there's two ways you can do this. Like, you can do it the way I'm doing it here, which is to slowly build up each colour in the areas, or you can just block it in really solidly and hope that you can blend the two colours together, which would be quicker, I suppose. Whereas what I'm doing now is I'm literally highlighting everything and then finding out where, or blending everything and then finding out where I need to add extra dark tones and extra highlight tones. Whereas if you just did the difference between the chiaroscuric effect of light and dark, you would actually solidly put those in, and then you could then think about if you can blend them together in a more subtle way. Okay, I'm just going to paint a little bit more, just doing up the build up of the cheeks, so I can have this framed area for the mouth, which will be then the next section. And then I'm going to move on to the next part. Okay, the next important part of the process is to get the lips right. Obviously, there's certain features on people's faces that make them look who they are. One of which on Gordon is he has these very thin lips. You'll notice as well though they have this kind of arch which then disappears at one end. Okay, so what I'm going to do is try and achieve that. So I'm going to get rid of that, and you have to remember as well I've got it so he's smiling. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do that, and then it's going to blend in away to there, like so. Okay, and we'll do the opposite side. Like so, and that blends away quickly to there. What I can do, if you look at his, it is quite thin there, and that's quite thick, so I'm going to erase quite a bit of this. So, paste in the rest of that. I think because I keep bouncing backwards and forwards between the eye layer and this layer, I'm going to just flatten both of them. So we've just got one layer now. Saves a lot of effort. Hopefully it won't cause any hassle when I'm building other parts up. Okay, his bottom lip. It's kind of like relatively normal, but it's kind of what do you call that? Pursed? I don't know. Anyway, I'm just going to try and do it. It's just a little after the way this dives out. So then I'm going to do that much there. Is it rounded or flat? It's kind of rounded, so I've got to make sure that it follows that kind of look and feel. Let's pull out, see if it has the feel of Mr. Ramsey's lips. Looks more like I think it needs to be a lot more thinner on the top. It's a problem when you zoom in and you can't see what you're doing in relationship to the rest of the face, then things can go a little bit odd. But anyway, we'll just narrow him down a bit. It's possibly better. And that just needs to be a little bit more rounded there. Okay, we're going to fill all that in. This is where understanding light and shape and volume and things works best to make these look more three-dimensional, because if I just pull this out as a flat coloured lips, it doesn't look very good at all. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so if I just pull out, that looks terrible. Yeah, may look like his lips, but looks terrible as an actual object. Okay, so what we need to do is obviously add all those details, and what I'm going to do is just delete that mask again, grab his lip section, mask it, move it over so I can see it, and we're going to play with this now until I get it right. Now you'll notice there's a strong dark line, which obviously is where the two lips close. That's your guide basically to keep the two sections apart. Now this cutting bit is a lot longer than I thought on the top part of the lip, so I'm going to change it a little bit like that. Like that. Okay, it's okay on this side because obviously he's just doing the normal part of the smile. Like so. This is one of the areas where you caricaturize them a little bit more than normal. Okay, to give that kind of cartoony feel. So anyway, then we just blend in all the necessary parts of the lip colouring. One side's going to be slightly lighter than the other, like so. I can't grab that light colour there. So what we're going to have to do is find it roughly there. Alright. So it's going to do that to give it some kind of nice colouring. I think what we need to do on this side is that maybe a little bit of highlighting. So just where the centre bit comes, there's always a bit of shadow as well. Then we can just blend that in. Looks like that is in the wrong place, so I'm just going to bring that to there. grab that colour and then do that. Okay, that should work. I've just got to do the bottom bit. So, right, let's just do the highlighting on the lower lip. Like so. And that should be about it, unless you want to do some really heavy white. Right, for instance, there's a bit there. bit there, bit there, bit there. Okay. Now if I zoom out, that should, yeah, look like a decent set of lips. Okay, so I'm just gonna play a little bit there. Like so. This should be set for the lips now. They look a bit extreme at the moment because obviously they're sitting in that pale pink, but as soon as we get the dark in they should all blend in and everything. Anyway, I'm just going to pause now. Okay, so the rest of the picture you have to do this part of the top lip. Saying that, actually, oops. Saying that, I need to basically move the mask up so I can see most of the top lip. There you go. And I'm going to just move it out of the way, like so. So what I've got to do is basically just sample the colours like I've been doing all the way along. Most of this part of the lip up to this there is a dark tone. Oops, make sure you don't press the shortcut key for pen tool. Okay, like so. This is one of the things that makes the nose stand out as well, this amazing shadow you got there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just quickly bash that tone in, which is basically all of that. Before anybody puts us a comment on the video, I know I always say basically a lot. That's one thing my students pick up on. So I'll just leave the bottom part of the lip until I finish this entire area. What you should see now actually when I've done this is that the tone of that extremely dark lip that we seen earlier, which looked like it had been basically lipsticked onto a fair skinned person, is going to actually blend better now, because obviously we're matching it a dark tone against a dark skin tone, and that's going to help it all quite a lot. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on bashing away at this and I'll pop back in later to show you where it stands. Okay, done the lips, done the top lip, just this area here now, and then basically we're going to be home dry because there won't be that much difficulty left. So what I'm going to do is just patch in the lightest colour, which I would say is that. So, I've said this before, you'll notice that he's got very distinctive scarring on his chin. So as long as we can get that right, this bottom part will work very well. So it's not worth doing all that because it goes into a deeper shade. So what we're going to do now is that. Which goes all the way around there. and do the blending. So now there's some highlight there. Let's just try and get that first scoring. So it comes around there. Knock it back a bit. It goes to about there. So, okay, there's another one. There. Sun goes down there. And the last one goes kind of like that. Okay, so that's his scarring system. All we need to do now is just to blend all this together, and that'll be the lower section done. So I'm going to do that, and I'll get back to you when I've finished, or pop in halfway through. Right then, we've got the lips and the lower lips sorted out. I've done that. It's not exactly the same, but fuck it. Can I say that on the video? I don't know. Anyway, what I'm going to do, I'm doing this in like 37 degrees temperature. It's just terribly hot here. So I just want to give up and just go and throw my head under a tap or something. But anyway, one must go on. So what we've got now is we've got to do the sides of the face, which is this bit here and this bit here and the chin. Okay, you'll just notice I've masked it off. It's quite strange looking. Whoop, and there you go. So what I'm going to do is unmask that a second. Now, I've got to try and find the darkest part of that. You can see there's kind of like a line. There's two lines, so I'm going to do one. Yes, it's got some up there. So I'm going to do slowly. Oops, I keep forgetting to do that. Slowly and carefully draw that down there, because that's the darkest area. That's going to go all the way down, I believe. And then there's a bit that comes around here as well, which goes into that cheekbone area there, like that. Okay, I think that's done it. And it stops there because if you notice it goes light again. Okay, so what I'm going to do is strengthen that a little bit. Okay. Now, I don't know how effective this is going to be as a tutorial, because I was talking to somebody the other day. It's not actually following things step by step that's going to make you a good caricaturist or a good artist. It's actually getting your finger out and actually doing something about practicing a lot. So you may find if you watch this and follow it, you're still not going to get the same result as I am getting. Maybe because I've been doing this for, well, I haven't been caricaturing for a long time, but I've been actually drawing and such like for a long time. And that's what it's all about, practicing. I'm just going to do that again, because I need to find out the darkest colour on that side of the face. I'm going to do the same again here. Bring it down when you're on the right layer. And what you could do is almost just fill that in with that colour. What we're trying to achieve here actually is to do exactly the same as this bit here, so this is a little bit wrong. So I'm going to darken all that there. Like so, and then this can come down like so. Take up most of the chin. Like so. Okay. Built it up like that. Now there is a little darker bit. Just going to line that bit there. See on the, there you go. So what I'm going to do there is just add that to there. Just do a little bit more like we did on the opposite side down here, because this does actually go down to this point before it starts getting a little bit lighter. So I'm going to do that down to there, like so. Okay, just give that a little bit of a more of a curl around there. The problem with some parts of the skin is it's all to do with the blending that you do, so it takes time, but it's well worth it. Right, there is a big scar there, so what we need to do is grab the scar colour. You see that's that light bit there, so the scar's going to start around about here. Actually goes down there. I don't think it matters if it's accurate, so I'm going to just do that. Make it a little bit thicker than it should be, because we're going to be blending the edges. Okay, like so. Now there is some highlighting along there. Like so. But the main amount of the highlighting is the opposite side, so I'm going to just patch that colour in there, which is the main base colour of that area. Like so. Down to that. Okay. I'm just going to move his chin down a little bit. Deselect. Let's put it there. I don't think I need that part anymore. So I'm just going to add a little bit of. See, this is I start at 8 o'clock and it's 4 now, so that's 8 hours I've been doing this. And you get a little bit tired after a while. So that's why you forget to change layers and things. Just gonna bash all that in. Like so. Just change that a little bit so you can blend that edge. Do that. Okay, and finally there's a little bit of darker effect there. And, oops, forgot to remask it. Hide. Right, let's pull some bits up here. I think that's basically that part of the chin done. Just going to try and get it to blend as much as I can. Okay. Right. Now there is some whitish highlights on there which I haven't done, which will just help the 3D quality. And then there's a line down there. And then I'm going to take a break because I need a coffee. Okay. So if I zoom out, I don't know whether I should put some extra kind of, not necessarily white, but just a little bit of, there you go. Didn't even notice that, did you? Alright. So does that look like Gordon so far? I think so. Yeah, I'm going to go and get my coffee and I'll be back. So I'm just finalising the chin. Just a few little bits left to do. You notice I've got this highlight over here, so what I want to do is to strengthen some of the highlights on the other parts which need them as well. But as I said before, you've got to try and make it look a little bit rough because men's skin are rough. Okay, like that. Now I'm thinking, you see this is even lighter. So what I want to do is just dabble a little bit of that there, a little bit there, a little bit there, some just up there. And we should be okay now for the last part of the chin, and then we can move on to the uninteresting stuff just to finalise it. As I said before, because he's wearing white, it gives a kind of a little bit of a reflection. So what we have to do there is to give that kind of indication. Right, so obviously it's brighter in some parts than others. And you'll notice here it's actually just a very thin band. Like so. Okay, now you can't see all the effect of that at the moment, but as soon as I do the darkness underneath his cheeks and things, you'll notice, his chin and things, you'll see the difference. Now there's a bit of a bump there as well, so I want to get rid of that. Like so. Just clean out the other layer as well. Okay, so if I just pull back, I think that kind of like looks like Gordon, even without the hair. Okay, so what I'm going to do, oh hang on, there's a little bit of a bump there as well. It's probably from the reflection we did, if you remember. Okay, so what we've got is Gordon's basic face. Okay, remember the original sketch? It's changed a lot, as I said it would, basically because when you do the observation directly from the photograph, it helps because you're actually seeing it live as you're doing it, whereas doing a sketch, it's a different kind of interpretation. So what I've got to do now is just finish off by doing his ears and his hair and then his clothes. As I said though, this is too big. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to reduce the size of the whole head, so we can have a little bit more of the clothing on top of the thing and give it a little bit of extra space just to have some wacky hair at the top. That should be about right. Right, what I'll do first is I'll whack in the ears. Now again, because of the 3/4 angle, it becomes a bit of a problem on one side, which is this side, because that's the shaded side. And also, if you notice on the reference image, you can't see most of the ear, but most people's ears are kind of the same on both sides. So what I'm going to literally do is just grab the lightest part of that, do that, and then build up, based on his other side, the ear, how I think it's going to be, to make it look a little bit three-dimensional. Now luckily there is a bit of ear you can see, so he's got a bit of a lube. And what I'm going to do as well is grab some of this dark bit to finalise this area here, because it would be darker. So there's that ringing I told you about, and we just need to then blend that together to give a kind of don't worry about these painty bits, that's on the photograph. Okay, and the final thing we need to do, because it wouldn't literally be like that, you'd have an edge so you could see it against the face. I'm just going to do that. Okay, so that's the earlobe, say. Now just so I can understand how this rest of this ear is going to work, I'm going to do the other side first. Deselect all that. Let's just get rid of that thing, just grab his whole head this time. Because I've done the central bit, then it doesn't really matter about the rest of it. Oops. Delete mask. Okay, so I can literally just stick that there and it doesn't create a problem. Another thing I've got to remember is from about there up it's going to be hair, but I've basically put the whole of the ear in so we can evaluate the shading behind that. Now, oops, I forgot to mask it. Okay. Alright, now there is a point, you see, where his ear is lighter at one end than the other. Like that. And the rest of this just goes into complete dark, well, not complete darkness, but like so. And that's where his hair begins, so everything else can be dark above. Like so. I'm going to carry on with the ear. You don't want to see me do the whole ear, so I'm just going to be back when it's done. Okay, so basically we've got the two ears in now. I think all we need to do left is the neck and the hair, plus the clothes obviously, but the clothes are pretty simple, it's just white. Saying that though, I'm going to put some of the actual base of the clothes in now, just to get some kind of indication of how it's all going to fit together. So what we need to do is choose a white to select. I'm just going to check the other picture, see what. You see, I believe that they flap over. They've got these buttons everywhere. So what I'm going to do is try to mimic that in my design. Yes, it goes all the way to the top of the back of the neck. So I'm going to start there. Drop down, bounce it out a little bit there. So, and then we're going to have that come out like so. And classic style, it goes out of frame. Oops. See, if you don't do it, this is the problem with this brush, is if you do it everything from quite a distance on a large brush, you see what you get that stepping effect. So you have to zoom in to correct everything, so you get straight, smooth edges like that. Okay, so we'll just fill that in. This is behind the neck, so it's not a big problem just pasting around it. Not pasting, painting around it. Like so. And then what we're going to do is obviously on the opposite side duplicate that. I think it's symmetrical, these uniforms. So it comes out. Where's that come out? Around about there. Doesn't have to be identical. And again, it looks like, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's just an optical illusion, but looks like the right side is closer to the right than, no, it's not, it's exactly the same. Okay. Now to save some time, I can just paste to, oops. I can paint from there to there behind, even though you don't see it. Use the paint bucket tool and then it should do that. This is slightly off-white as well, I don't want it pure white. You can see the pure white of my monogram. I'll add the pure white when I'm painting the detailing. Okay, so that's that. So now we just fill in the neck. Now if you look at the neck, this is usually the darkest of all the colours actually. So as per usual, I'll do it above the neck layer just in case something goes wrong. I'm going to choose, well, I'll choose the darkest bit. Well, most of it's all that colour, so I can just basically literally do that. And all we need to do is worry about the highlights and shadows. So there's a shadow there which kind of you see you've got your throat that comes up there, and there's going to be some shading underneath there. Like so. But this is also going here. And there's also that part of the neck that comes in. You can see it just a bit there. That's a little bit darker actually. Didn't actually choose the dark colour. Okay, like so. This is where the blending of lots of darker colours becomes quite clever if you can do it properly. So I'm just going to. So that's going to be all dark. It's dark down there. It's going to be dark underneath there. And there's a little bit more darkness there. Darkness on the edge of town. And that's going to be dark. Okay. Now there is obviously other dark areas, but we're going to blend those together like I said. So that's all going to be dark there. That's all dark. Up there. That's kind of like dark coming out there and up there. Like so. And what we're not seeing is probably the ultra darkest point. Which needs to go underneath the chin. Okay, just got to blend that together. I'm actually going to pick my own darkest dark, and then we can hit all the really dark bits quickly like that. That's going to help that under chin stuff. It's going to be a lot more darker there. There's darkness there. There's probably some darkness there. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just blend that. And then we're going to have, you notice there's some light coming from here, so just he's got quite a few, but I'm just going to do one. Maybe that second one, just to give it a hint of it. Like so. And then we just need to do the very fine line. Like so. And just to give it a little bit of, I'll do the other one like that. Okay, and then we'll blend that colour up that side because it's not going to be exactly even. Like so. Now you see he's got shading there from his hair, but we can't do that because obviously the hair's further up. That's the problem with caricatures, you don't do exactly anatomically correct, so I'm just going to fake it a little bit there. See if I can just grab and that's it. Just give it a little bit of a strength in the highlight on that one. Now there is a little bit of highlight underneath here. Which means there is also some shadow that goes up. And like so. How old is Gordon? I don't know how old Gordon Ramsay is, but anyway. What we can do is just give him some of those and I think we're done for the neck. See, that's quite quick. Yep. Saying that, I'm going to just do that on this side very carefully, just there. Just as if the light is also coming from that side like that. Okay, that should do. So we have Gordon's head on a platter, as it were. Okay. Final part of Gordon is going to be the hair, but I just realised I made a mistake, so I'm going to pause and correct it. Next, I bet you can't guess what I did wrong. Okay, if you can, I'll give you a free copy. Okay, now what I'm going to do is the hair. Now this is the hairstyle I want, because that's more like what he's known for. It's kind of really boofy, kind of all over the place look. Okay, now you'll see if you look at the height of there to there, it's roughly the same as the height to there, so this hair's got to start around about here, and it has the ability to go all the way to there. Okay, a lot of it's based on highlighted flicks as well, so what we need to do is do the undercolour. There's lots of dark there, there's medium colours there, and then dark here. I think I'm going to choose this colour, and then we're going to build up everything over the top of it. You'll also notice he's got some hair flicking over here, but that's over the top, so what we've got to do is build up from the sides, and you'll notice from this picture as well that includes like over the top of this part, and that's why I didn't paint these parts of the ears. Okay, so what we're going to do to start with is behind the ear, above the ear thing, I'm going to just build up the background shape, so it's actually over the top of that, like so, which is going to be roughly kind of like here. Like so. Don't worry, there's going to be so many little wisps all over this, it's going to be unnoticeable as anything other than a mess. So anyway, we're going to do this here the same. This is going to be, might as well do this in black. Now this is the first stage, as I said, because you'll notice it doesn't go into the temple area, so we need to do a top layer as well instead of the bottom layer. Like so. I get a bit scared doing hair sometimes because it looks like it's going completely pear-shaped, and at the end you end up finding it works out just fine. Now I'm going to do that colour for the top part, mainly because there is no dark there. And And as I said before, this brush is actually designed to be a hairbrush, not a hairbrush, but a brush for doing hair. So it's kind of ideal for actually doing all this kind of wisping stuff, but you have to make sure it's quite small, like so. And that's got to come out quite a lot, because as we know, it's a caricature and it's not a highly detailed portrait, so it's got to have some kind of strangeness to the shape of the hair, like so. And the same on the opposite side. You can't see either picture that he's got the same width there, but I'm going to do it anyway because it'll balance it all out. Alright, there's a dark bit there. We'll just start off doing it there because obviously the dark bit's got to come over the top, hasn't it? So it's going to come round there. You see some dark there, like so, and then it's going to come all the way down the side to there, and that can go black again. It's really funny when you look at something like that. It doesn't look like the person it's supposed to be, but it will turn out to be Gordon Ramsay's hair. It's the thing about base layering, you see, because you've got to think about what's underneath, not what's on top. And most of this is all on top, you see, so it's going to come together when we actually start painting the shapes. See, this is all just wisping, so I'm just going to miss that. Like so. Right, what I'm going to do now, that's roughly the shape. I'm not going to show you all this process again because it's just time consuming. I will pop in during the making of this because I want to show you how I do the wisping and the highlights, but I'm going to just patch this together so it looks nice, and then you'll see how it all works. Okay. As you can see, I'm finishing off the hair. As I said, it's just a sprayed, tangled mess basically, so it's not that difficult to do. It's just got to follow Gordon's hair as much as possible so we can see the similarities. I think that's pure white, that is. So what I just need to do is, I've just been looking at it, the whole picture that is, and there's something, it looks like Gordon Ramsay, but then again it doesn't, and I'm trying to think what it is. And now when you look at the picture from the one I've been using for the colour sampling, it looks like him, it looks the same almost, yeah. But if you look at the one I've been using for the hair, you'll see it doesn't look like him much. Now, I think a lot of that's got to do with the length of the nose. The nose looks very long on here, but it looks long on there. If I measure that to that, that's about the same length. So I measured that to that. Let's just do that. You see, it is a bit longer than it should be. Now, what I can do, which I've done before in the past, is just literally do some, what I would say is plastic surgery on the caricature, and just alter the bits that I'm not happy with. Now that takes a little bit of time, simply because I've got to patch all the bits. So what I have to do, let's just close both of those off and I'll show you what I mean. His chin area, possibly this area here, across his nose, and this bit here all have to go up. Now it's all on the same layer, which is one good thing. So what I'm going to do is see if I do a test. That's the nice thing about the history of Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is just crop the bits I think need to be moved up. And I'll see how hard it is to blend it all together. So I think. Okay, what I'm going to do is hide that so I can see what I'm doing, and then push it up. I think that's what it was. See, if you look at the difference between that and that, it makes a hell of a difference in the shape of his nose. So what I'm going to do is keep that, and we're going to have to do some plastic surgery. Which, that's why I've tried to do it as painlessly as possible on certain lines, so I don't have to do that much filling. Like say, for instance, let's deselect the thing. Now, I don't know whether the clone stamp tool would work on this, but basically I like the idea of it's all being hand rendered, so I'm going to do it hand rendered, and what I'll do is I'll bump back in when I've finished doing this and show you the change. Okay, one thing I just noticed is he has some stubble. I don't need his picture anymore, so I'm going to get rid of it. Okay, but he's got stubble. Now that's a bit of a pain to do, especially the way he's got it. I'm going to do it on a separate layer. Basically just spot around, not too much. Problem is you've got to keep it really small, the brush. It helps if you sometimes, it needs to be a little bit darker as well. Sometimes give dashes. Like so. So over here it's going to be almost difficult to see. One thing you can do in that area is you'll see there's some light ones as well. That'll just help you give the impression that obviously hair is there reflecting light. But over here you won't see many of the so what we do is just slowly build it up, and that's a good thing about putting it on a different layer, is simply because if it goes wrong you can just get rid of it. Okay, obviously I'm not going to do as many hairs as he's got, but after a while it will start to look like stubble. That's another reason it takes like 4 to 5 fucking hours. It's because you have to do all this messing around with stubble. Oops. Notice you see I've made a mistake there, so I've got to get rid of that. It's times like this when you're near the end, you need to start thinking about how to clear things up. Press the wrong tool. Right, give that a little bit more of a curve. Patch that bit up there. So, okay. Get back to this, just do a few more, especially around, oops, that's the error I get when I move quickly. If I start painting before I finish moving, I get that happening. Shows how eager I am. What I'm going to do then is just to zoom out a little bit, so it helps to break up the highlight as well, so it's good to do that. So zoom out. As you can see, it's not exactly the same as here, so it's too detailed as well actually. So what I'm going to do, get the blur tool, just wazzle over it a little bit, see if it numbs out those, so it looks more like fill. Okay, I'm going to leave it like that. Okay, this is the nice thing about Photoshop, you can just practice and play with things until you get it where you want it to. Okay, I think that looks like, if you stuck that in front of somebody and said, who the hell is that? I'm sure they're going to be able to say that's Gordon Ramsay. And that's a good sign. Well, it's the first sign of being able to be acceptable, I suppose. I don't like that little bit there. I just want to get some. You see, that's what. This is one thing you can do, is you just keep fiddling with it. Oops. See, now I'm messing with it too much now, and it's going over bits I don't want it to go over. Let's just get some very fine hairs there. Okay, I'm going to call it quits on that. So the last thing we've got to do is the clothes. Okay, now I don't need sketch anymore. Again, I'm just going to grab the masking on that, zoom in. Now, this is relatively difficult actually, because what I've got to try to do is that's at a 3/4 angle, so I've got to try and imagine what this is going to look like when it's straight on. But you see, this is the white side and this is the bluish side, so all I need to know at the moment is there's not that much on this side that needs to be white. So this is where his collar, you see that's that collar, so this is where this is going to come down, so this is where that is. So wherever I go with this, it's going to have a big lump come out of it, and then it's going to come down, and that's what you can see there. But everything else basically is that kind of light blue. And this is where this probably comes in there. And again, I'm going to do everything, because that's cutting in. I'm going to have to play with the neck part now. Now, the thing about the clothes is they're not the main thing. They're not the head. So I try not to spend too much time worrying about them. Saying that, I did one for Mads Mikkelsen, and I spent hours doing his tie because it had a paisley look on it. I don't know whether I should have kicked myself, but anyway. Now you see there's a problem here with the neck, so I'm just going to correct that while I'm thinking about it. If this is a curve of that thing, it wouldn't naturally have that effect. It would carry on doing that, and then this would come down a bit more, and that would then join, so it's like a right angle, like so. Okay. Like that. Alright. Back to the blue. Right, I'm going to pick some of the blues. See if I can do these. No, hang on, I just want to correct that. See, I'm going to choose that blue, but then I'm going to use it for doing this part of the. I'm going to grab the white. I don't even know if that's pure white. It's not pure white, so. Okay, and also one thing I've got to be aware of when I'm doing all this is I do two versions of this. One's an extended one because obviously I put it on certain products and he needs to show all his shoulders, which means it has to go down a bit, so I try to be careful where I actually do certain colouring on clothing because I don't want it to be too difficult to blend the new version and the old version together. And that's got to go like that. Again, there's some more darker blue at the back there. Blue-grey, let's call it blue-grey. It's probably better to call it blue-grey. Okay, there's some blue-grey there, which comes out of into that. I think what you do with the clothing, because unless it's necessary, I don't think there's that much need for that much detail. So what you see here is that there's going to be a big mound of white that goes there, but it's going to obviously then blend into that patch there. It even actually goes up there, like so. That goes into the collar effect. Let's just get rid of that. So the collar has to be more around there. Okay. And what I can do then is to, for instance, you'll see that there's this. So I'm going to do that there, and then just give that going down there. So that'll be enough for that. I'm going to pick that blue to finish this crease there. Is that you, honey? It's farting. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm talking on mic. That's my dog. I think the dog's in the room somewhere, but I'm not sure. You can always tell. Okay, so getting close now. Most of these chef suits have these buttons, and Gordon's is no exception. Now I've got to try and grab some dark blue, so I'm going to just grab it from somewhere else. I'll create the shadow underneath. I need some subtle shadowing around the backside, and then obviously we do the highlight like that. There you go, that's one of the buttons. Okay, so from that point there is another big strong bit of white, but that looks nice actually. I quite like the way that all is coming together. Okay, so what I need to do is move him out of the way because I can't see that neck area. Deselect, put him in the center there. For some reason it keeps snapping back, I don't know why. Anyway, so you'll see where I am. That for some reason has, oops, helps if you're on the right there. A kind of a slightly lighter white there, but then we're going to get into this darker blue, which, oops, make sure you mask. Okay, I'm going to grab that blue then, make sure it gets darkened all where it needs to be. Which is all this part. I'm going to grab some of this because I'm just going to realise that that's going to help a lot more if I excuse me, sorry, I shouldn't do that on microphone. I'm going to grab that dark blue again because it needs to have a cut in. You see, it's different from this, but it doesn't really matter because nobody's going to look at the original picture and say, ooh, it's not exactly the same. Okay, so we're going to grab that, do that, which also acts like a seam, I think. So I'm just going to do that. Gives a nice seamy feel to it. Do that. I'm just going to blend this together, just to give it a nice smoothness. Like so, and that's one side done, I think. Can't see any problem with that. There is just a little bit of blue coming away from there. Okay. Now that's the easy side. Shouldn't have said that, should I? Okay, actually saying that there's probably some blue coming down there, which will then fit into the need when I do the other bit, and that goes around there a little bit. Okay, like so. Okay, so we've got that sorted. I'm just going to do that a little bit darker as well. Right, now the hard side. Why is it harder? Because I can't see most of it. So I've got to try and guess what most of this looks like. Okay, so I think that's going to come down here. You'll notice it's got this as well. So I'm going to make this come to there. You can't see it on that side. Make sure that blends a little bit better. Get this, and it's obviously got a crease underneath that part, which is a fold sort of, which goes all the way down to there. And then what I do is I just have to blend. Yes, oh, I've got it on a blend mode. Blend mode, it's just less opacity. Okay, now I'm guessing because of the way studio lighting works that there's going to be kind of like a little trim of highlight there, which is going to help everything there as well. Take this blue, have it come all the way down here, which then has to on top of that one, like so. And this also has to blend around there. Like so. And then this has a slight deeper blue to it to there, which then has the ruffles going to his neck thing there, and then that's going to have a slight gonna have to do the highlight stronger. Like so. Come through there. Keep some of the white because it'll help me blend it later when I do the extended version. So I keep that like that. Blend it. Blend all that. Right. So not actually white, I should say that. It's kind of a very pale blue, that is. Okay, let's just do that like that. Now that's gonna do this kind of thing. Like that. I'm recording all this because it's near the end, so I thought it'd be nice to see it come to its conclusion. Okay. Now I could actually leave a lot of this like this because, as I said, I've done it in the past, like Woody Allen's and things like this. I don't spend too much time on the clothing, so I do it as roughly as possible. But as I said before, when you pull out, it seems to retain the perception of persistence of vision, not perception, the persistence of vision. So your brain basically says, oh look, it's nice clothing. Yeah, instead of lots of scratchy lines. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just quickly render that and smooth it slightly. Same there. Pull out. See, it's looking okay. Now, to save my sanity, I'm just going to do a very rough light blue there. Bring this out here so it's light blue. Follow that light blue as an arc around there, which it has there as well anyway. And then we could call it quits probably on the suit for this part. I'll have to do the other oops, I've just done I shouldn't put that shortcut next to the shortcut code for making brushes bigger and smaller because I keep pressing the pen tool so often. Whoop, you see, quickly create error-free drawings by knowing your shortcut keys. Right, that needs to come down, I think, if it that needs to come down there like that. And we just use that to blend. Like so. And finally just blur that into each other. Like so. the best test is just to pull out, and I'm not happy with the way that's looking. Okay, so that's roughly that. I'm not going to do any more blues and things because I want to keep it as white as possible. Saying that, it is lighter than the opposite side, which is pure white. Let's blend that together a little bit better. Okay, now we've just got to finish off by doing the other button, which they have on both sides, I believe. Now, as we know, that's from a 3/4, so I've got to just really kind of copy this approach because I'm looking at it straight on. I'm going to try and do it from the same distance roughly, so it's about there. Just do that, and then we get some white. So that's the second button in place. Again, nobody's going to care really, I'm not going to look at that button. Final thing I'm going to do is just bring some of this like so to conclude it, and then I'm just going to select the colour first, blend those bits in. So, right, I'm just gonna, as I've done here, I'm just gonna touch a little bit of, because it'll help A because it's against a dark background, and B because I want to. Okay, now I'm just going to delete the picture so I don't need to worry anymore. And the last thing you'll notice, I always put a monogram on my pictures. It's white. So what I'm going to have to do now is choose a different colour. I think I'm going to see if that, does that work? Yeah. It's nice to do something that's blending with something in the background. Okay, and there we go. There's Gordon Ramsay. Finished.